In today's video, I attempted to beat Pokémon Emerald Rogue using only shiny Pokémon. Pokémon Emerald Rogue is a ROM hack, which changes Pokémon Emerald into a roguelike game. If you are unfamiliar, roguelike games are a genre that combines randomly generated levels and permanent character death. Examples of roguelikes could be games such as Hades or Risk of Rain. Essentially, every route will be a randomized level, and there will be hardcore nuzlocke rules. If a Pokémon faints, it's automatically released from my team, and if my whole team whites out, I have to completely restart a run. In Emerald Rogue, there are 8 levels, with multiple routes to match up with 8 gym leader battles, as well as the same for Elite Four and a Champion. Along with the routes, there could be secret paths to take which could hurt or help the rest of my run. I started off by choosing my starter, which wouldn't really matter anyway because it wasn't shiny, but I decided to go Cyndaquil. It was finally time for me to start my first run. I had a couple options here, but I decided to go with the average wet route at the top in hopes of finding a strong water Pokemon. I started my shiny hunt, and in a little while, I finally came across this shiny Lotad. I caught it, and finally had my first shiny team member. Next, I hopped onto a different route, where I quickly found a shiny Smoochum. Having caught my second Pokemon, it was ready for me to take on the first gym leader. In Emerald Rogue, before you face a gym leader, you get a chance to heal your teammates, and even go to this woman to the left right here and face a Chansey, where it will level you up to the level cap of that gym leader. So I leveled all my Pokemon up to level 15 and was ready to take on Juan. He was easy as my level 15 Lombre with Absorb tore through his low-level water-type Pokemon, and there I had my first gym badge. After that, I made my way back into another route, and it was time to go back to grinding. See, in Pokémon Emerald Rogue, the shiny odds are greatly improved, which made this challenge a lot easier. According to this Reddit post, they say that the shiny odds are 1 in 100, with the Safari Zone odds being even more increased, which I got into later in the challenge. In my experience throughout the challenge, I would say 1 in 100 sounds about right. Sometimes it took me 5 to 10 minutes to find a shiny, but other times it took me upwards of an hour. While I've been rambling on in the background, you saw me catch that shiny Natsu, and in the next route, I find a shiny Larvitar. This is another component of Pokemon Emerald Rogue rest stops. There are different kinds of rest stops, such as healing ones or battle prep ones. Right here, I'm in a battle prep one, and here I could go to different move tutors and teach my guys egg moves or level up moves, and even go buy good items for battling, like leftovers, and you could even buy mints that could change your Pokemon's nature to make them more competitively viable. At other rest stops, such as Mart rest stops, it's possible to buy TMs and Pokeballs and potions to help you throughout your runs as well. There's even this guy here who will just straight up trade you a random Pokemon, so I sent him my Quilava and ended up with this Smeargle since I couldn't use my Quilava anyway. After that, I was on to my second gym battle against Brawly, who sent out a Heracross. My Xatu made quick work of that until his Hariyama whirlwinded out my Smoochum. I don't know what was going through my head, but for some reason I thought Smoochum would be able to survive a hit from Hariyama, and there we had our first death. After that though, Xatu quickly cleaned up, just spamming Air Slash, and I had my second gym badge. Then it was back to the grind until this shiny Chansey appeared, which I caught, followed by this shiny Execute in the next route. My Chansey became a Blissey, my Larvitar evolved into Pupitar, and I was ready to fight the third gym leader. Once again, it was a pretty easy gym battle with Lombre taking out the Vulpix, but he almost fainted, so I decided to make the switch into Pupitar with a Rock Slide to take out the rest of her Pokemon, and we had our third gym badge. And up next, here's where things got interesting. One of the routes you could choose in Emerald Rogue is a game show. As you see here, I chose on the right, and Xatu got stronger, then all my Pokemon got weaker, and finally I chose the right the third time, and Xatu got traded away for a Deoxys, which unfortunately I could not use as it wasn't shiny, and this was the start of the downfall of this run. Which you could see right here as Lombre gets taken out by a Ninjask Aerial Ace, Pupitar gets taken out from a Ledian Ice Punch, but luckily Execute was able to take out the rest of her Pokemon with confusion. Winona proved to be a tough one, but we took her out and got our fourth gym badge, and we're ready to continue the run with just Blissey and Execute. Looking for my next shiny, I chose this corrosive route, where unfortunately a wild Weezing that was faster than Execute took him out with a Sludge Bomb because he was faster, so I had to use a Fluffy Tail to get away. I decided to leave that route as there was way too many fast Pokemon that I could not run away from, So here, in the next route, I was hoping for a shiny to continue the run, but this Onyx sand trapped me, so I was unable to do anything as my Blissey was so weak attack-wise, and my first run ended. Before I started my second run, I decided to utilize the Safari Zone feature of Emerald Rogue. In the Safari Zone, you could catch any previously caught Mon that you got in any of your runs with apparently an increased shiny boost odds. So I caught my Natu because the Exatu I had in the last one was pretty good and was off to the races. The first shiny encounter I found in the first route of my second attempt was this Geodude, and after catching him I immediately went on to fight the first gym leader, which luckily was Brawly, whose fighting types were no match for Natu and Peck. After getting our first badge, I went straight into the next route, which was probably the most important route of the run, as I found the shiny Dratini, which proved to be extremely useful throughout the entire thing. In the next route, I found this Tentacool, which also helped out a lot as it gave me someone to lead the team and maybe even set up toxic spikes on my opponent. After that, I went straight into fight Juan, who, after a couple of Exatu air slashes, was promptly defeated, and we walked out with our second gym badge. My Dratini became a Dragonair. At the same time, my Tentacool became a Tentacruel, and things were looking good. In the next route, I found this shiny Murkrow, caught it, and was ready to take on the fourth gym leader, who ended up being Lizette with Psychic types. Tentacruel took out the Baltoy. I then decided to make this switch into Murkrow to Nightshade and take out the Grumpig, but unfortunately I did not take the Lunatone's Power Gem into account, and the Murkrow was immediately defeated after I got it. However, Exatu was able to finish things off, and we got our next gym badge. Once again, I got right back into shiny hunting. I caught this Ledian in the first route, then I found this gold Anorith in the next route. But right when things were looking up, I ran into this trainer who had this Aggron, which one-tapped my Tentacruel with a head smash. After finally finding this Graveler, which took a little while, it almost proved to be fatal. He almost knocked out my Dragonite in one hit with a Rock Blast, and when I made the switch in, he used Explosion, so I couldn't catch him anyway. The next stop on my way to a fourth badge was a Dark Deal encounter. Here I had the chance of a Catching Charm, a Shed Skin Charm, or a Strength Charm. I ended up going with the Catching Charm, and like in most roguelike games, if you get a charm, you also get a curse. So this time I got the Crit Curse, and I went to view what it was. My ball effectiveness was increased by 100%, but opponent Pokemon had an increased crit rate. Going into my fourth gym battle, I was hoping that this did not happen. Luckily for me, Winona was a little easier for me this time around, as a mixture of Armaldo and Dragonite were able to pretty easily sweep her team. I got my fourth gym badge, and I was halfway to the Elite Four. This time, in between gym leaders, I decided to skip a route, and on my only route found this shiny Primeape, which I caught and immediately switched out Stomping Tantrum for Earthquake. Once again, I was coming up against Flannery with her fire types, and I used Xatu to stall out Solar Power Charizard with its substitute, took out the Magcargo with a Psychic, and then switched into Dragonite to finish out her last couple of Pokemon using Aqua Tail. After this, I came across another unique encounter in Emerald Rogue, this one being the Pokemon Lab. In the Pokemon Lab, I had an opportunity to take a Pokemon which had previously fainted on my team, so I went and I got my Tentacruel back. Then we had another Dark Deal encounter. This time, I decided to take the Grace Charm in exchange for the Species Curse. The Grace Charm giving me 75% for extra effects like Serene Grace, and the Species Curse not allowing me to have two of the same species in my party. Next was a gym battle against my dad, who, let me tell you, was not taking it easy on his kid. One Facade from Zangoose was enough to knock out my Xatu, so I brought in Primeape to take it down with a close combat. After that, I tried healing Primeape back up, but one return from Snorlax took my Primeape out next. With nowhere else to go, I turned to my sweeper Dragonite. I was able to take down Snorlax with just one extreme speed, and then Outrage, so I took out 3 of his last 4, but then made the switch to Armaldo so I could save my Dragonite, and Armaldo was able to take out Lanoon with a Stone Edge, so I beat him, but not before losing 2 of my team members. Going right back into the hunt, where I could have got a Metagross, I probably found one of the most useless Pokemon, and as I was leaving the route, ran into this trainer whose Rhydon one-tapped my Tentacruel with an Earthquake, but on the next route, found a new Toxic Spikes user and was able to replace it with the shiny Ariados. So I did just that, and was on my way to my final obstacle before reaching the Elite Four, the 8th gym leader Watson. I decided to go with Sticky Web instead of Toxic Spikes, and I was left with no choice here other than to sack the Ariados. I put in the Armaldo and was able to take out Electabuzz with a Stone Edge, and I was able to almost take out the Magneton before he fainted my Armaldo with a Thunderbolt. Once again, it was up to my ace Dragonite to get the job done. He took out the Magneton, extreme speeded the Plusle, and with just 3 Pokemon left, I decided to outrage and hope that he got all 3 before he was confused, which he did. Just like that, I was on my way to the Elite Four. But not before replenishing my fallen team members with the shiny Nidorino that I found. Now, all I needed was a Moonstone to make it a Nidoking. Unfortunately, the mart didn't sell it and I didn't pick one up during this run, so my only hope was to find an item on the ground in the wild, which I did almost immediately on the very next route. Before I started my hunt, I evolved my Nidorino into Nidoking, and then this probably was the longest hunt, taking well over an hour, but I finally found a Claydol. I caught it, and finally my team was looking good again to face the first Elite Four member. The Elite Four member I would end up going up against was Glacia, and starting out with Dragonite, the Ice typing was not a good matchup. However, as I explained before, the Dragonite was too overpowered to be taken down. I set up with the Dragon Dance, and between that, using Outrage and healing up my Dragonite whenever he got low, I was able to sweep Glacia's entire team just using Outrage. As I took down her final 2 Pokemon, Sneasel and Articuno, I went right away to the next route, where I hunted until I ended up finding this shiny Gloom. I caught it, and my team was looking pretty good. My next opponent in the Elite Four would be Drake, whose Dragon types would be really tough if it wasn't for my Dragonite. Once again, I set up with 3 Dragon Dances while this Flygon did God knows what, opting for the Roost on full HP, interesting choice, while I continued to set up and use an Outrage, which took out his first 3 Pokemon, all super effective, but I got very close to my Dragonite fainting here, so I was able to use a full restore I bought at the last mart before I faced Drake, and once again was able to just spam Outrage until his team was defeated. I still had 5 team members here, and my team was looking pretty good, so I decided to skip the route and the hunt completely and run right through the mart rest stop and get ready for the next Elite Four battle. Almost losing my Dragonite to the type matchup last battle, I decided to start with Claydol. I set up a Stealth Rock, and after Shadow Balling the Sableye, its eject button brought out a Sneasel, which I easily Earth Powered. This brought back out the Sableye, which I was also able to Earth Power and take out. And then he sent out Tyranitar, which I was once again able to Earth Power and take out. This time Claydol was doing all the work until he brought out this Sharpedo. So I decided to sack this Delibird, who did not want to die yet, so I brought out Dragonite. This decision once again almost ended the run, as I didn't predict Sharpedo's ice coverage. So I switched back into Delibird, ready for him to tank a hit, until the Sharpedo went with Protect, which allowed me to keep my Delibird out and use him to heal up my other Pokemon, which had gotten low, and finally he took an Ice Beam from the Sharpedo and died. Gloom came out ready to go dancing, using a Teeter Dance to confuse it, and then I went to take it down with a Petal Dance, but unfortunately it used Destiny Bond and took the Gloom down along with it. So I sent back out my Dragonite, Aquatailed the Houndoom, and then was able to just outrage his last Pokemon. Before heading to the champion, I ran into another dark deal. Here I decided to stack a second Grace Charm in return for the Shed Skin Curse. I was hoping the Grace Charm stacked on top of each other and gave me 150%, but the Shed Skin Curse just basically gave all opponent Pokemon a 15% chance of shedding a status condition. Finally, it was time for the champion. I started with Claydol, hoping to set up another Stealth Rock, but stupidly didn't realize that the Kingdra was just going to one-tap me with a Hydro Beam. Down to just Dragonite and Nidoking, they had to take down all 6 of the champion's Pokemon. I set up with the Dragon Dance on my Dragonite, hoping he'd be able to sweep the team. And Extreme Speed took out the Kingdra, as well as the Mantine, as well as the Starmie. Down to his last 3 Pokemon, I decided to use an Outrage. Unfortunately, the Pelipper held on with the Focus Sash, and I got confused. Wanting to take no risks, I full restored my Dragonite to get rid of the confusion, took out the Pelipper with an Extreme Speed, and the Sharpedo with an Outrage. I did it. I beat the champion of Emerald Rogue hard mode using only shiny Pokemon. It was finally done. Or so I thought. Wallace let me know that there was another battle that would be harder than any battle I had had yet on the way, and the only 2 Pokemon I had were Dragonite and Nidoking. Luckily for me, on this tough, gloomy route, I was able to find this shiny Venusaur, which was huge for my team, as not only is it a beast of a Pokemon, I was down to 2 members and I desperately needed a third. I was also able to go back to a Pokemon lab and pick one of these 3 previous shinies I had, and I chose Claydol in hopes I could set up a Stealth Rock for the last and final battle. When using the Pokemon Lab, a Pokemon has a chance of having a curse. This Claydol came with a wild curse, which wouldn't matter because I was on my way to the final battle. I set up my teams with items, did one last run at a rest stop, and was on to the last battle. The champion, Steven. He started with a Metagross. I sent out my Claydol. Like I said, I decided to set up with a Stealth Rock and he Meteor Mashed me, almost killing me. His Shuka Berry made my Earth Power do less damage, but I was able to use one more and take him out. I Hyper Potioned my Claydol, but the Play Rough from the Mawile rendered it useless. I decided to Earth Power the Mawile and was able to take it out in one hit. He sent out an Aggron. It being 4 times weak to Earth Power, I decided to use that and take it out once again in one hit. My Claydol was putting in the work. Next, he had a Mewtwo, the most powerful Pokemon. Its Ice Beam took out my Claydol, and I was down to just Nidoking, Venusaur, and Dragonite. I sent out my Dragonite, hoping I could kill it with 1 Extreme Speed, knowing it had an Ice-type move. It didn't. The Mewtwo, with a 4 times super effective Ice Beam, takes out my Dragonite in one hit, and my ace was gone. It was just down to my recently caught Venusaur and my Nidoking, which I hadn't used in battle much. The Mewtwo took out my Venusaur with just 1 Fire Blast before dying to a Sandstorm. My Nidoking needed to take out these final 2 Pokemon. The Earthquake was super effective against the Jirachi but couldn't take it out. I was paralyzed by his Body Slam, but luckily for me, I was able to go through the paralysis with the next Earthquake. As he brought out his last Pokemon, the final Pokemon I needed to beat this challenge, Lugia, I healed up my Nidoking with a full restore, taking no risks. Luckily for me, I had taught my Nidoking Thunder, which was super effective against the Lugia. However, it didn't do much damage, but luckily I was able to paralyze it. I used another one, and another one, and took down the last and final Pokemon in the Emerald Rogue Shinies Only Challenge. My Hall of Fame consisted of 1 Pokemon, just Nidoking. He was immortalized into the Hall of Fame, and the challenge was complete. I was the league champion. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. If you've never checked out Pokémon Emerald Rogue, I highly recommend you do so. It's one of, if not the best ROM hack I've ever played. And if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what other Pokemon challenges you guys would like to see, or any challenges or any other games you guys would want to watch me play. Peace.